attracted to a book by its title. Fine, I'm a terrible person, caught my eye, and I invited the author, Lisa Rosenberg, to join me for a conversation. So, welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
You were born in Marin County. What was that? What was it like? Did you grow up there?
I did. I was born in Marin County, and I was a child in the 60s. At the time, it was the center of the Haight-Ashbury and hippie life and the revolution, the cultural revolution of the 60s in Northern
So, what,
California.
what was life like for you at that point?
I was a small child, but I was in a family of immigrants, so we were not so cool, not so hip, a little bit of an outsider in that scene at the time.
Well, you grew up in a Ladino culture.
Yes.
What is Ladino? How did it affect your life?
Ladino is the language spoken by Sephardic Jews. They were the Jews that were exiled from Spain during the Inquisition in the 1500s, and they took their Spanish with them wherever they went, scattered across the globe. So, whatever culture they were in, they brought some of that when they also sort of borrowed a little bit from around where they were. So, it's an amalgamation of Spanish and Hebrew. In my family, Greek, Turkish, all sort of mashed together in this language that sounds a lot like Spanish, but isn't quite like Spanish.
Like Yiddish, where
It exactly.
everybody from many nations understood Yiddish, even though their mother tongue was completely different and they couldn't talk to each other that way.
Exactly, but most people know Yiddish as that language, that third language of Jews from Eastern Europe and Europe. They don't know so much about Ladino, which were the Sephardics from the Mediterranean and the
Well,
diaspora of different lands.
what's the difference?
Spanish based, not German based. Most of these were from uh, Arab countries, Greece, Turkey,
But I
Morocco.
imagine, I imagine the food, the way
Food's very
food was
different,
prepared, very different. The
very
language
different.
spoken, maybe even the occupations, were very different. And it was an entire society. Now you were
Yes.
part of that society. What was expected of you to be able to be accepted into that society?
Well, they were very superstitious and they never said anything in a straight way. Everything was a proverb. My family spoke to me in proverbs. They didn't say, my grandmother never said, turn the lights on. She would say, turn the lights on because the sun shines bright in the diaspora, and everything required a spitting for good luck. There was garlic all over the house. She would safety pin garlic to my clothes to go to school. We were odd and outsiders, and I thought my family spoke Spanish. So I thought I spoke Spanish. And when I went to school, I found out I did not speak Spanish. I spoke something totally different than Spanish.
Well, did you find the difference a problem or an asset?
Well, as a child born here, I was embarrassed by my immigrant family because they weren't cool. I used to have to take my grandmother to the grocery store, and I called her with her Ellis Island fashion sense. And at the time, it embarrassed me, and I feel terrible about that now because I love and respect my culture now, and I celebrate it and I'm honoring it, I think, with my work now. But at the time, it embarrassed me.
Well, just to move on, at age 12, your father abandoned you and your mother. How
That's
did
true.
that affect you and your life, from that point forward and your future?
Well, it was devastating, but I didn't know it at the time. I was adaptable, but it made us more outsiders, more of an island. We became closer. My mother, my grandmother, my aunt, and I, we were a family of women, and we were an island. So we became a lot more insulated, a lot more close, and it was very challenging because my father had a big family, and they were all around us, but they weren't, available to me anymore because he sort of took his whole family with him. They were Ashkenazi, different culture.
Well, finally, you reached the point that I guess everybody, when they're growing up, reads, and you decided to leave home, and you landed in New York.
I did.
Why New York?
I was on the run, a little bit of a runaway. I was frustrated with all the family conflict. And I ran into a friend at a cafe and she said, "Oh, I'm going to New York. Do you want to come?" And I said, "Okay." It was really that much thought I put into it. I was 18 years old and it seemed like a good idea at the time. Went.
Did you ever consider what goal you'd like to reach by going to New York, or it was just a road trip and, let
I
life happen the way
no.
it's supposed to?
I wanted to go to school. I wanted to be in school. And I had planned to go to school in California, and the rug was pulled out from me a little bit by the person who promised to pay for it. And if, in a fit of pique, I ran away to New York. And that's what I did there. So it was, New York's an amazing place. You can do anything there. So I was able to accomplish that.
Well, what did you study in school?
Art, I went to the School of Visual Arts and I studied art.
And did you follow a career in that path, or
Oh, yes,
did life
ultimately,
get in the way?
life got in the way a little bit. It took me a while, but I did get a degree in art history and then ultimately a master's degree in art history. And I am an art historian. And my work life up until now professionally was as a gallerist for art dealers. And I worked for a couple of different museums in San Francisco also.
Okay, now that you've reached the age that you're at now, and you've achieved the goal, are you satisfied?
I'm never satisfied. I think it has to do with always wanting to prove myself. I got a master's in fine arts and creative writing when I was 60. I always am thinking of the next thing I want to accomplish.
What's your book about?
If you loved Big Fat Greek Wedding and Postcards from the Edge, you're going to love my book because it's a mother-daughter story, but it's set in a culture of quirky, endearing, eccentric people from a culture that is historical and tragic, but also hysterical.
Here's one last question. What's in the future for Lisa Rosenberg?
What's in the future? Well, I'm going to keep writing and I am going to continue to share my most recent novel with the world and enjoy my new life here in Miami. I've only been here a year and I'm having the best time.